If you wanted to hide, say, $50 million in 2010, you bought a compound in the Bahamas.
Right. Classic move.
Yeah, it was the standard playbook. But if you want to protect that same $50 million today in 2026, you are buying into a high-tech fortress in the middle of the Argentine wilderness.
Which sounds crazy, but it's absolutely true.
It is wild. So today we are opening up a really fascinating stack of intelligence. Specifically, we've got excerpts from a briefing called The Southern Sanctuary, South America's Rise in Luxury Migration. And alongside that, some very recent data on what's being called the 2026 Luxury Expat Shift.
And it is a massive shift.
Exactly. We are looking at this quiet, just massive revolution in global capital flows. The world's most elite American expats, tech founders, venture capitalists, billionaires, they are suddenly abandoning those established Northern Hemisphere havens.
Yeah, completely pulling up stakes.
Right. They're ditching California, they're leaving Florida, and they're moving to the Southern Hemisphere in record numbers. So our mission for this deep dive is to decode the data, and really understand why the smartest, most insulated money on the planet is completely changing its coordinates.
The scale of this movement, it really cannot be overstated. As someone who analyzes global migration patterns for the ultra-wealthy, I always look for signals versus noise.
Right, looking for the real trend.
Exactly. And this isn't a temporary reaction. It's not just a trickle of adventurous retirees looking for a cheap beach. It is a fundamental structural realignment of global wealth.
Wow.
Yeah, we're looking at a 2026 shift that is completely redefining the entire concept of a safe haven. The physical infrastructure, the targeted tax incentives, and these unprecedented levels of private security are all just converging.
Converging on South America?
Specifically South America, yes. Regions in Uruguay, Argentina, Colombia, they're positioning themselves as the premier refuge for capital preservation right now.
Okay, as a financial journalist who spends, well, basically all day looking at capital flight and asset protection, I have to stop you right there.
Sure, go ahead.
Because historically, right, if you made a massive fortune in Silicon Valley or on Wall Street and you wanted out of the U.S. tax net, you went to the Caribbean.
The old reliable.
Yeah. You bought that island compound, or maybe you headed to a classic European hub like Monaco or Zurich. Why is that traditional model suddenly breaking down? Escaping the U.S. is only half the equation. So what exactly is failing in the global north?
Well, the traditional luxury retreat is basically suffering from a massive case of its own success. And that's being compounded by failing infrastructure.
Wait, failing infrastructure in luxury hubs?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Take the Bahamas or similar Caribbean havens, for example. You have these billionaires buying compounds, but they're suddenly surrounded by severe overcrowding.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, and supply chain vulnerabilities. Plus, the exorbitant cost just to maintain basic, reliable security and power. Like the grid goes down, the value proposition is just completely broken at this point.
So they're paying a premium for a substandard experience.
Exactly. But beyond those logistical failures, what the data really highlights is this pervasive, they call it global north fatigue.
Okay, let's unpack this. Global north fatigue. Because it sounds like a very polite way of saying they're just, tired of the political and social ecosystem up here.
That is precisely what it means. But it goes a lot deeper than just being tired of the news cycle.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is the psychological shift.
How so?
Well, for decades, luxury migration was primarily a mathematical equation, right? You went where the capital gains rate was zero.
Right. It was all about the spreadsheet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But today, the ultra-wealthy are seeking something much more complex, which the briefing terms geopolitical neutrality.
Geopolitical neutrality.
Yeah. They want to completely detach from U.S. instability.
Yeah.
From the rising social costs and from that intense, just inescapable political polarization that has saturated everyday life up here.
So it's not just about hiding the money anymore.
Not at all. They aren't just looking to shield their money from taxes. They are looking to shield their daily existence from societal friction.
Wait, let me push back on this, because we are talking about South America here.
Right.
Historically, this is a region known for currency volatility, political pendulum swings, and just a lot of institutional unpredictability.
It has that reputation, yes.
You're telling me a tech billionaire feels safer parking their family and their primary assets in Argentina than in, say, London or Geneva?
That's exactly what the data shows.
But how? How does relocating to a South American country insulate them from, a sudden national currency collapse or a drastic change in the local government? Moving wealth from Miami to Monaco is a known entity. Moving it from Miami to the Southern Cone feels like a massive geographic and honestly financial gamble.
I get it. That skepticism makes perfect sense if you view this migration through the lens of traditional integration.
Okay.
But these expats are not integrating into the local economy, or the local vulnerability for that matter.
So what are they doing?
They are utilizing highly specialized, hyper-secure frameworks. They are essentially buying into sovereign-level privacy laws and these special economic zones, zones that are legally firewalled from local institutional volatility.
Legally firewalled. How does a legal firewall actually work in practice, though? I mean, if the country around you is experiencing a crisis, a piece of paper isn't going to keep the lights on or protect your physical assets.
And that's where the infrastructure comes in. But what's fascinating here is the mechanism behind the legal protections themselves.
Walk me through it.
These aren't just national laws passed in the capital city that can be overturned overnight. They are legally binding long-term treaties coded into the very zoning of these new developments.
Wait, the zoning itself.
Yes. We are talking about autonomous luxury zones, where the local laws are practically written or heavily amended to protect foreign assets.
That is wild.
The host nations understand that to attract this level of capital, they have to surrender a degree of jurisdictional oversight. So your assets aren't sitting in a local bank subject to hyperinflation.
Right, because that would be a disaster.
Exactly. They remain in offshore, dollar-denominated trusts. Meanwhile, you live in an enclave that operates almost entirely independently of the national grid and the local financial system.
Which brings us to the physical reality of these places, right? Because you can't just drop a Silicon Valley founder into the rural pampas without losing the infrastructure their wealth relies on.
You definitely cannot.
The briefing calls this the visual paradox.
The visual paradox is really the defining aesthetic of this entire 2026 shift.
Set the scene for us. What does it look like?
Picture this. You are standing in Uruguay, or maybe the Patagonia region of Argentina.
Yeah.
You are surrounded by absolutely pristine, untouched, rugged nature, just gorgeous landscapes.
Sounds like a vacation ad.
Right, but right in the middle of it, you have ultra-modern architecture. Sleek skyscrapers, high-tech enclaves.
Skyscrapers in the wilderness.
Yes. These countries have aggressively evolved to build what are known as smart barrios.
Smart barrios?
Yeah, they are freely curated luxury communities that boast Silicon Valley-level technological amenities. But they are set in these vast, environmentally insulated rural environments.
So it's essentially like dropping a piece of Palo Alto or, lower Manhattan into the middle of the pampas.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
But surrounding it with an invisible digital moat of private security? Frankly, though, you're talking about a demographic that panics if the Wi-Fi drops on their super yacht.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving to the Andes implies they've somehow guaranteed an uninterrupted, completely redundant tech infrastructure.
They absolutely have. These smart barrios are entirely self-sufficient.
Really?
Fine.
Entirely?
Yes. They utilize private microgrids powered by renewable energy. They have autonomous water purification systems and dedicated satellite uplinks that bypass local telecom infrastructure completely.
So they don't even use the local internet providers?
Nope. The Wi-Fi doesn't drop because they literally own the localized grid. But the most critical piece of this infrastructure is what the intelligence calls that digital moat you mentioned.
Yeah, I saw that term in the sources, a digital moat. Break down the mechanics of that.
So the digital moat is basically the backbone of this entire migration. Instead of building, physical 30-foot concrete walls that draw attention and look like a prism.
Right, which defeats the purpose of being in nature.
Exactly. These enclaves use invisible, layered security. We are talking about drone perimeters, biometric access points, AI-driven surveillance that monitors miles of surrounding terrain.
Miles.
Miles. And private security forces that are often better equipped than the local municipalities.
That's incredible.
These expats aren't just buying homes, They're buying into the most advanced private security networks on the planet. This digital and physical infrastructure is exactly what makes these South American enclaves the safest luxury bet today.
It's fascinating because it completely flips the script on risk. I mean, my primary concern with emerging markets would be physical security and institutional stability.
Of course.
And you're saying they've solved for both by essentially creating these autonomous, hyper-secure luxury zones.
Exactly. They engineered the risk right out of the equation.
But let's look at the financial mechanics of this, because once the security and the Wi-Fi are locked down, we have to talk about what the sources call economic arbitrage.
So the math on this is staggering.
Here's where it gets really interesting, at least for me as a finance guy. This is where I start to see why traditional European hubs simply cannot compete anymore.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the financial math is what turns this from just a cool lifestyle choice into a mandatory wealth preservation strategy.
Exactly. When you look at the 2026 exchange rates, the leverage is just off the charts. Let's explain how this economic arbitrage actually works for a listener who, might not be looking at global Forex charts all day.
Sure, let's break it down.
It's not just that things are quote-unquote cheaper down there. It's about leveraging the immense strength of the US dollar against depreciated local currencies, while, and this is key, maintaining your income or asset base in dollars.
That's the secret sauce.
Right. An American can maintain a literal billionaire lifestyle in these enclaves for the cost of a mid-tier U.S. executive budget in San Francisco or New York.
It creates an unassailable generational wealth multiplier.
Unassailable. I like that word.
It really is. You take a net worth that makes you merely, say, upper middle class in an expensive U.S. coastal city.
Which doesn't buy you much these days.
Exactly. And by relocating to one of these smart barrios, you instantly upgrade to a 5-star, ultra-secure compound with a full staff. And Europe simply cannot offer that.
No, not at all.
Europe has high taxation, regulatory stagnation, and a cost of living that often exceeds the U.S.
And it's not like the South American nations are just passively letting this happen either. They're actively engineering the influx.
Very aggressively.
Yeah, the briefing highlights these highly aggressive tax incentives and golden visa programs. But what caught my eye is that these aren't just blanket visas for anyone who wants to buy a cheap condo.
No, they are highly selective.
Right, they are laser targeted.
They're actively courting the creators of capital. These new golden visas are specifically designed for remote tech founders, venture capitalists, high-level executives.
They want the big fish.
They want the ecosystem. The host countries realize that attracting this specific tier of wealth doesn't just bring in some tax revenue, it imports an entire ecosystem of innovation and stability.
It's a brilliant macroeconomic play, honestly.
It really is. By offering 0% capital gains taxes to foreign tech founders who hold their assets in offshore trusts, places like Uruguay and Argentina are essentially buying a future tech sector.
But wealthy people don't just, sit in empty high-tech fortresses counting their tax savings all day.
No, they expect a certain standard of living.
Exactly. The lifestyle has to match the bank account. And the briefing spends a significant amount of time detailing the cultural upgrades in specific cities, pointing heavily to Medellín in Colombia and Buenos Aires in Argentina.
The cultural sophistication has just exploded to meet the demand. In Medellín and Buenos Aires, you are seeing a revolution in amenities that completely erases the old stereotype of an emerging market compromise.
So no more roughing it.
Not even slightly.
Yay.
You have an explosion of Michelin-starred dining, highly exclusive private social clubs that require, global board approval just to join.
Wow.
Yeah, and wellness retreats that rival anything you'd find in Switzerland or California.
Let's talk about the healthcare aspect, too, because that is always the ultimate deal breaker.
Oh, yeah.
If you are a high net worth individual, you aren't going to move your family somewhere if you can't get world-class healthcare at a moment's notice, and the sources indicate a massive shift here as well.
We've moved far beyond the old concept of medical tourism. What we are seeing now is medical residency.
Medical residency. Okay, explain that.
These smart barrios and elite city districts have concierge medicine integrated directly on site. We are talking about state-of-the-art hospitals staffed by physicians who often trained at Johns Hopkins or the Mayo Clinic.
Oh, wow. So U.S.-trained doctors.
Yes, operating with the absolute newest diagnostic technology. It provides a massive psychological safety net for these families.
So the equation is completely filled in. You have the Michelin food, the elite healthcare, the digital moat, the massive tax breaks, and the sovereign-level legal firewalls.
It checks every single box.
It makes total sense. But it raises a deeper question for me.
What's that?
Is this just a temporary reaction to the current political climate in the U.S., or are we looking at a permanent realignment? Because when you look at the strategic future of Southern residents, you really have to factor in the long game.
You do.
And according to the intelligence, the longest game of all right now is climate.
The climate resilience factor is really what separates this from just, buying another vacation condo in Miami.
Right.
Look at the traditional luxury coastal markets in the Northern Hemisphere. They are increasingly vulnerable. Rising sea levels, extreme weather events, uninsurable properties, the structural risks are compounding year over year.
It's getting harder and harder to ignore.
Exactly. Coastal Florida, parts of California, even the Hamptons are facing undeniable long-term threats.
Contrast that with the geography of South America, specifically the Andes and Patagonia.
Exactly. These southern regions offer incredible long-term climate resilience. They are elevated, they have abundant and secure freshwater sources, and they are geographically insulated from many of the extreme weather patterns that are currently disrupting the global north.
So it's a strategic retreat.
Yes. The smart money is looking 30, 50 years down the line. They are securing resources and elevation.
Which brings us to why this matters to anyone listening right now. I mean, even if you and I aren't venture capitalists looking to park $50 million in a Uruguayan smart barrio, we have to pay close attention to what this capital flight is signaling.
Absolutely. It's a bellwether.
Right. These individuals have access to the best predictive risk models, the most advanced private intelligence, and the most accurate climate data on the planet.
They see around the corners before we do.
Exactly. If their models are telling them to aggressively liquidate their Northern Hemisphere assets and flee to the global South, what does that mean for the rest of us left dealing with the economic and environmental fallout?
It means the paradigm of global safety is shifting rapidly. In fact, our 2027 forecast, which is based on these sources, anticipates the rise of what we are calling American villages.
So what does this all mean? American villages? That sounds almost surreal, like a sci-fi concept.
It sounds like it, but it is the natural, inevitable evolution of this trend. These will be entirely self-sustaining, elite communities that provide all the cultural familiarity, the language, and the networking power of the U.S.
But completely removed from the U.S.?
Yes, completely removed from the political polarization and the environmental vulnerability of the homeland. It is basically a parallel society built on the foundation of geopolitical neutrality.
That is just, wow.
But there is a critical warning buried in this data.
Which is?
The window to secure these safe havens is rapidly narrowing.
It's like tracking this money is like watching the watertight doors close on a submarine.
That's a great way to put it.
They aren't just moving to a new cabin, they are sealing themselves off from the pressure. And there is only so much room inside.
That is the perfect analogy. These enclaves are highly exclusive by design. They do not want overcrowding. They are terrified of repeating the mistakes of the Bahamas or the traditional European hubs.
Right, they don't want to ruin the very thing they're building.
Exactly. Yeah. So as more wealth tries to flee the global north, the price of admission to these South American sanctuaries is going to skyrocket. Furthermore, those sovereign-level privacy laws we talked about,
Yeah.
they will likely tighten to protect the early adopters and keep the latecomers out. The smart money is moving right now in 2026 because they know the gates will eventually close permanently.
It really is a masterclass in how global wealth adapts, leverages arbitrage, and just insulates itself against systemic risk.
It's survival of the richest, quite frankly.
It really is. To summarize what we've unpacked today from the briefing, we are witnessing the 2026 shift. It's a massive structural migration of elite American wealth moving toward geopolitical neutrality to escape the friction of the global north.
Right.
We've explored the visual paradox of Uruguay and Argentina, where ultra-modern, legally firewalled smart barrios sit in pristine nature, protected by those invisible digital moats.
Amazing tech.
Yeah. We've broken down the economic arbitrage of cities like Medellín and Buenos Aires, where leveraging the U.S. dollar creates a generational wealth multiplier that Europe simply can't match anymore.
Not even close.
And finally, we've looked at the undeniable climate resilience of the Andes compared to the sinking coastal hubs of the U.S.
It's a comprehensive strategy. Capital preservation is no longer just about beating inflation, It's about physical and environmental survival at the highest possible standard of living.
Which leaves us with a rather profound and, frankly, unsettling thought to consider. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to look past the Michelin-starred dining and the high-tech security systems and just focus on the sheer scale and urgency of this migration.
Yeah.
If the most well-resourced, highly informed individuals in the world are aggressively utilizing their vast wealth to secure climate-resilient, politically neutral fortresses in the global south, what exact future in the global north are they paying so much to avoid?